Evening and welcome to tonight's Q&A session. My name is Bridget Barry and I coordinate Farming for Nature. Farming for Nature was set up to encourage and inspire farmers that farm or wish to farm more for nature. And one of the ways we do this is each year we find exemplary farmers that are doing practical actions on their farm for nature. And these are called our Farming for Nature ambassadors. This Q&A session is a great way to hear from these ambassadors, to ask some questions, and for you yourselves to write in the chat box and ask questions as well directly to the farmer. So over the next hour, I'll kickstart the event by asking our guest speakers some questions. But if you have any questions for the farmer, like I say, on your black banner, there's a chat box. Just type in your question and we'll facilitate them as we go along. So if you miss any of this session or you know of anyone that would be interested in seeing this session, it will be up on our YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. So feel free to share it and to let people know. So on to tonight's event, we are delighted to welcome one of our more recent ambassadors. We have Shane Fitzgerald and his fiancée Kate Curran with us. Shane and Kate run a dairy farm in County Waterford. Shane and Kate, thank you and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi Bridget, thanks for having us.
Listen, you might just start, Shane. You have 93 hectare dairy farm, like I say, in County Waterford. Can you describe your own journey onto this farm?
Yeah, I suppose I took the scenic route. I suppose I went to WIT after school back in 2009. It would have been when I finished my leaving cert. It was a really bad year. Some people remember it was a really bad year weather-wise. The milk price is really bad, so my mum advised me to go off and do something different. So just in case the farm didn't work out, so I went and done a business and accountancy course in WIT for 4 years, and I got to travel as part of that. So I got to go to Canada on a scholarship, and I got to go to America on a J1, and nothing to do with farming or agriculture. Really broadened my horizons and was maybe more mature, more independent. And I always knew in the back of my mind I wanted to go back to the farm, but I think it was the right thing to do, to go off and travel and experience different things before I did go back to the farm. So when I finished then in WIT, I went to Dalton in 2014 and on my dairy herd management course there from 2014 to 2016. And I got to go to New Zealand then as part of that on my work placement. And I got to learn there all about grass management, the business side of things, working with people, all that kind of side. It was like large, intensive farms out there. So it was a big learning curve again, just getting to travel as well was a great experience. So when I came back then, I was around 26. My dad would have been 63. So it was a good time to go home really at that stage. It was a good time to transition onto the farm. My dad was willing to step back. I was ready to take a step up, and I was more focused and motivated, and I knew where I wanted to take the farm at that stage. I had a plan done from Kildalton for 5 years. So at the time we were milking around 120 cows, and the plan was to go up to 200 cows over 5 years. It was all based on whether we could grow enough grass. So if we could grow enough grass to carry 20 extra cows a year, we would do that. If not, we would hold the number. So at that stage, and I suppose I always say that to groups that do come to the farm, there was nothing really in my mind about environmental sustainability at that time. It was all about production. It was all about growing as much grass as we could, being as efficient as we could. And I would have taken every hedgerow out of the place at the time. That was my mindset. Like, so obviously it's changed since then, because I wouldn't be an ambassador for this program if I was still thinking the same way. So it was just different times. Like, you know, sure, people on the call could probably relate to it as well. Like, and maybe even still now the mindset can still be very production focused. So we started to focus more on improving the other pillars of sustainability, which is the environment and the social side of things as well. So I suppose, yeah, from the years in 2016 to around 2020, they would have been the years of expansion. And then over the last 3 to 4 years, we've been focusing more on the environment side of things. And Kate has come back to the farm then 3 years ago as well. So it's now with myself and Kate, my dad, that are on the farm full time.
Kate, are you from a farming background as well?
Yeah, so I'd be from a beef background, so sucklers. And I suppose in the difference of mine, my dad was in reps and stuff like that. So he was always putting in hedgerows, doing like planting trees and things like that. So we would have a lot more like hedgerows and stuff. I suppose when I came here, then I could see that Shane, like, because when he did his he was in Kildalton, he went on his work experience to New Zealand. And so when he came back then in 2016 on the farm, so that's what he wanted to do. So like they, had big plans to go back, but to the likes of the way the New Zealand type was, I suppose now like that he's, we just see the big the big plains of like the fields shown. There's no like just big massive blocks of land, and then they have just the water tracks in the middle, and it's just more room for the cows and stuff. But I suppose I always liked the hedgerows, and I think they're just lovely. It's lovely, just nicer kind of type of farm. And even like Shane brought them up to my dad's farm. It's actually rented out now at the moment to the dairy farmer that lives next door to us. So like just even hedgerows, they're just so much nicer around the farm. Like there's more shelter for the cows and stuff as well. So if you have a rainy night, they've more shelter to stand around. So now like that, like now just to see how much the farm is after coming on, even since I came back in the 3 years with the hedgerows and stuff now that we're after starting to plant and leave the hedgerows grow up. It is becoming a lot nicer farm as well, as well, and it's helping the environment at the same time.
Brilliant. Yeah, it sounds like you guys have been on a journey towards this. Tell me, Shane, can you just tell us about your farming system? So what is your farming system? It's now November. What's going on the farm at the moment?
Yeah, so like our farming system hasn't changed. It's still the spring-calving grass-based system. We're milking 200 cows here on the 93 hectares. So we contract rear out the heifers when they're a year old to 2 years old, and we just have the calves on the farm. So basically, there's 200 cows now on the farm, and there's 46 calves. So it's a very streamlined, efficient system still. We're a derogation farm, so we're right up on 220 kilos per hectare. So I suppose it does surprise a lot of people when they hear that we are stocked that high and we're still able to leave lots of room for nature as well. So, so at the moment, like cows are still out of grass full time. We're obviously measuring grass, so we're budgeting out the grass for as long as we can into the middle of November and trying to keep the days of grass as high as we can, basically. So we try and get up to 300 days of grass if we can. This year we won't achieve that because we couldn't get out in the springtime as much. But we've had a good growth period over the last 2 weeks. So we still have cows out full time. We just give them some silage then after milking, and the young stock are still out. The calf heifers have come back from the contract rear. We keep them then for the winter time, and we have enough silage and slurry storage and cubicle space for those. So they're indoors at the moment. And we have 33 cows right off, so we're making 165 cows at the moment. So things are fairly winding down now this time. Yeah, so it's twice a day, and we will make twice a day up to Christmas around the 20th of December, and then we'll be dry then till around the 20th of January. So we'll have a month off, and then we'll be calving all the cows between February and March. And this year they should be all calved by the end of March. It's to be a 10-week calving season, so probably calving around the 25th of January, and it'll be finished then by the end of March or maybe the first few days of April at the latest. So it's very, very compact and streamlined. I suppose that comes again from my background, maybe the business side of things. I am still very business minded as well. So, and again, it goes back to getting that balance. Like, so as much as we're focused on the environment, we still want things to be really streamlined and efficient from a business point of view, and then also from a labour point of view, which is important because we still want to make sure we have a good lifestyle on the farm as well. And we're actually getting married in December as well in a few weeks. So it's important that things are set up fairly efficiently, that we're able to get time off the farm to celebrate the wedding and to go off on our honeymoon. So so we're lucky we have a good infrastructure on the farm to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, so we'll actually there's a lot there to deal with, but we might just start. Well, congratulations on obviously getting married, and I assume it's not on the 21st of December, the day after you guys take a break, is it? But coming back to grassland management, so what do you do on your farm? Like, as you say, you have quite a tight herd, you have a big herd, you're still out in the grass, so your grass is very important to you. What do you do to your grass to keep it healthy, keep it like so that you're not just kind of countering it with feeding the cattle extra? So what do you do for your grass?
Yeah, so basically, Bridget, our grassland management hasn't really changed too much over the last few years. We're still trying to grow 14 tons of grass for our stocking rate of been around 2.4 cows a hectare. So we're doing about a cow to the acre, still a fairly good rule of thumb. So we still have to grow that much grass, and if we don't, we're going to have to buy in lots of feed, which you don't want to do. So The only difference is now we can't split as much fertilizer, so we're trying to find different ways of growing the same amount of grass with less fertilizer, less nitrogen. So we would have spread as much nitrogen as anyone over the years, like up to 250 kilos per hectare, whereas last year we were got back to 170 kilos per hectare, and this year we're back to 160 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. So it's a substantial cutback, but the only way you can really do that is through clover. So we've implemented added lots of clover to the farm. We have 80% of the farm has at least low clover in the farm. So there's 20% of the farm would have no clover, and there's a small percentage of the farm would be really high in clover, but in around 65% of the farm would have medium levels of clover, which we find is ideal because too much high clover can cause issues like bloat and make it hard to graze this time of year. In the springtime when it's wet, you have more issues with poaching. So we have gone pretty heavy on the clover. And the other thing then is tied in with the clover is multi-species swards. So over the last 3 years we've added in the multi-species swards with chicory and plantain and red and white clover, and that still has the perennial ryegrasses as well. So like we could easily just stuck with the grass and clover, which works well, I suppose, but we are trying to look at maybe a little bit deeper, trying to improve our soils, especially our soil structure. So clover is great because it takes in the nitrogen organically or naturally. So that's how we can reduce our reliance on fertilizer. But the only thing is clover doesn't do a huge amount for the actual soil structure itself. The roots wouldn't be as deep as the likes of chicory or plantain. So by incorporating those into the soil, it should actually improve the soil health. The soil will hopefully be able to improve or to fulfill its potential and reduce its reliance on artificial fertilizer. So there's loads of benefits to it, like the longer roots again break up the soil. So we have noticed even in the springtime when the ground was normally saturated that the soil was being broken up more by the deeper roots and leaving the water filtered down through it. And as well as that, we're finding drier spells that the deeper roots are able to get down lower down for the water as well. So when we measured the grass, like last year, we would have had some kind of a dry spell back in May and June for maybe 7 to 8 weeks. And some of our grass fields are gone back to growing like 40 kilos per hectare per day, whereas those fields had a lot of roots are growing 80 kilos per day. So double for the following, say for 10 days or more longer, which is actually a good bit of extra growth. So those kind of things are just making us a little bit more resilient to climate change. We're trying to adapt a little bit, trying to be ahead of the curve. It does complicate things a little bit more because obviously we add in extra variety of species, it takes a little bit more management, but we don't really do much different with grazing. We still graze them every 3 weeks or so in the summertime. They're on the same rotation as our grass and clover fields, which again keeps it fairly simplified. We don't try to complicate things too much, but it is definitely improving our sustainability and our resilience to climate change. So we're willing to try all these different things out. And multi-species is definitely one of those pieces to the jigsaw, but it's not for everyone, and it works in certain parts of the farm. Like you're not going to go put it over the whole farm, but we have it in 20% of the farm, and that's enough for now.
Shane, I'm just going to say, when you're talking, maybe put the computer close to you, and then when Kate's talking, put it closer to her. I think the microphone just varies a bit. Sorry, I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah.
So, okay, just going back to your multi-species sward, do your cattle perform any differently on the clover mix to the multi-species swards? Like, are you seeing any improvements on it either, or like, I mean, even milk quality or quantity? Is there anything different for your cattle?
No, we haven't noticed any substantial differences. I suppose the multi-species swards are all fairly new as well, like so they're all have been established in the last 3 years. So you'd expect them to be fairly high performing, like, and they have been so far. Like, so as I said, we haven't been having longer rotations. It doesn't take longer to get back into the paddocks. Cows are grazing them out well, and we don't notice the big drop off in production or anything or solids. So yeah, we're happy from that point of view, but it's just a big reduction in chemical fertilizer is the key. I suppose the worry is down the line with persistency. I suppose we do know that chicory and plantain is not going to last, and that's never really too much of an issue because you're going to be left with grass and clover. I suppose at the same time we don't want to be left with loads of ducks in the fields as well, which is always a worry. Like we don't have any so far now, but like we probably would just have to spray them off if they did come, and just keep the grass and clover. So if you end up with lots of ducks in the field and end up with lots of old grasses, because we do incorporate Timothy and Coxwood into some multi-species, again, deeper rooting plants, but they're not as palatable for the cows and not as good for production. So you don't really want those old grass and docks taking over the field, or you're going to completely sacrifice production. So again, it goes back to just trying to find that balance. And we've tried a few different things out. And last one we said we would have put a little bit more perennial ryegrass in, rather than the old type grasses, and we just used the chicory and plantain for deeper roots. So you can kind of mix it up according to your soil type and what you're looking for. But we definitely don't want to sacrifice production. That's the message we always try to get across. So even though we're trying to improve soil health, it's no good for us if the farms of the herd suffers. Like, because at the end of the day, we need to make a living and be viable from a production point of view. So that's important to us as well.
And like obviously last year stroke this spring was really wet. How did you feel your grass maybe better performed than you would expect it to, or than it had in previous years, or was it just it's hard to compare because it was your grasses have changed, but it was just so wet, or were you kind of happy with how it kind of performed with that amount of rain?
Well, no, definitely the growth was definitely back. Like, probably towards the middle of the summer, like would have been back probably about 1.5 tons of dry matter per hectare, which is a huge amount. Like, growth to be back when you compare it to the same time last year. But we've kind of caught up now towards the back end, so we should actually be around the same as last year, if not a little bit more even. So we had a good burst of growth from the last I suppose 2 to 3 months. Really, the growth's been pretty good down here. We haven't got any real droughts like parts of Kilkenny and Carlow and Tipperary. They seem to get drier spells, which we didn't seem to get affected as much. But really, it's more so down to the weather. Like, it can be very localized as well. So I think the bigger issue, even rather than growth, was actually utilization. So if we could even get the cows out in the springtime, they weren't really able to make the use of the grass because they were basically trampled into the ground or dirtying it and just wouldn't graze it. So you just had to leave them out for a few hours, as we call it, on-off grazing. So you might go out for 3 hours and bring it back into the shed, and that's all you could do. So we wasted a lot of grass in the springtime. Even though we were growing it, we just couldn't basically graze it. So that's going to be more of a common theme going forward. We're definitely going to get these kind of wetter shoulders of the year, we call them. So it will be harder, even though we've a fairly dry farm overall in the southeast of Ireland, but it is going to be getting harder and harder to get the cows out to grass in the likes of February and March and then into October, November. Because we've been lucky this autumn, but we're getting wetter and milder winter, so we are definitely going to need to try and improve our soil health that's able to take this water more and that's going to be more resilient to the higher levels of rainfall over shorter periods of time.
Okay, I'll come to you in a minute, Kate. I just want to ask Shane one more question. How have you adapted your your sheds, your internal farm to manage perhaps a longer period that cattle are inside, or what have you done around the yard to kind of be more, like, I suppose, improve animal welfare and be better for sustainability?
Yeah, well, I suppose, Bridget, like it was 2019, we actually built a cubicle shed. So we were kind of again trying to think ahead to make sure we had enough space for every cow. So we do have a cubicle space and a feed space for every cow, which is important. So, for example, when we are buffer feeding, like I said there, when we get the cows out for a few hours, when we bring it back in, or else when we feed them some silage after milking, they can all eat together. Because if you only keep them in for a few hours, they need to be all able to eat together, then they can go to grass or vice versa. So it's important that you have that space for feeding and then lying down. So there can be cases that farms are short on cubicle space, slurry space, or feed space, that they end up having to put cows out to grass maybe in less than optimum conditions. And basically, like I said, you end up just wasting grass. Then cows don't perform as well. There can be issues with their body condition score. So they're basically how thin they are, and that kind of implications for breeding. So there's a lot more ties into it as well. So it's so important that you have that space, and I suppose that gives us great peace of mind. And when the weather goes against us, that we cows in, because we have the infrastructure and the setup there to be able to bring them inside, and they're just as comfortable and they're clean inside. And because if there's too many cows in the shed, again, they're going to be too dirty, and it makes it's issues for milk quality as well, and a lot more work trying to keep them clean. So there's loads of reasons there just to have good infrastructure. So when we built our shed, it wasn't just for the environment reasons, but obviously that all ties into it as well. So we're in a good position from that point of view.
And just on a very simple level, a kid said to me recently, do happy cows produce happy milk? I mean, if you were to respond to that, what do you think? Like,
I'm not sure what to say
do
happy
you
milk,
think
but I
they
would say more
produce
milk because
better milk? Yeah. Do you think the quality is better?
I'd say more or less it's just more milk really because and probably better quality because yeah, just when they're well fed, like they're more well fed. Um, Basically you have to meet the requirements because I suppose, and that's another thing as well with the more, I suppose, wetter springs and wetter autumns, like we are seeing that we have to make higher quality feed for when we're indoors, and that's a trap we would have fallen into before. Especially even last year, say 2023, we would have had poor quality silage left in the springtime, and that definitely would have affected the milk production then for the peak, and that would have had a knock-on effect for the rest of the year. So, because we are falling into the trap, because all our land is actually in one block, we're crossing the road, but the cows can get access to every field. So we were saying we're going to get the cows out of grass basically nearly every day of the lactation. So, like I said, 300 days of the year. That's all well and good when the weather is in your favor, but when you get springs that we got last year and this year, and autumns like last year, you soon realize that you really need good quality feed for when they're inside because cows are actually now milking a lot more indoors than we'd like. And that's going to be more of a common theme going forward. So we're definitely become more conscious of growing higher quality feed um, for the winter. And that's just again trying to be self-sufficient so we don't have to buy in too much feed. Like we don't want to be relying on buying in like loads of maize or beet every year or buying loads of supplements. So it's important that we can grow enough grass, but at the same time we need to make enough quality silage for when the cows do have to come inside it. They're just as well fed and then they'll produce lots of high quality milk then because we're finding if we don't feed them properly in that spring period, that peak time in March, April, May, if they don't get fed well, then it'll affect their whole lactation. Their milk production won't peak for the year. So we become more aware of that as well. So all these things are all being influenced by climate change. We're trying to adapt to that with different measures.
Interesting. Kate, just over to you, and you can just maybe put the mic closer to you. So you arrived on Shane's farm and kind of had a look around and was like, right, there's a fair few less trees here than I'd expect the cows would like to see. So perhaps maybe take me through what you guys are doing in terms of hedgerow management, and just kind of in terms of trees in general.
Yeah, so with we planted just a new hedgerow there probably this time last year actually it was, and that's starting to so it's going to just be like we're going to leave it grow up and act like a shelter belt, and we're hoping to do the same again. Hopefully, maybe next year do another part of the farm as well, and just have it just to break up the bits of the big areas of the fields. But there is like another side of the farm that we rent, and we have where we have all our multi-species as well. We have all hedgerows, and but like we even moved out like all that side of the farm doesn't be spread with any chemical fertilizer, with the multi-species. So we also moved out our fences, about 3 meters. So there's acts of like these fields, so they're called field margins. And then one of the fields that we did, we actually did it 4 meters, but it was a little bit too much. Like you don't need to go that wide. And we just said, look, we try it out and see what it'd be like. And then where there's any water courses, we've moved them out 1.5 meters. But it actually looks so nice down at that part of the farm. It's actually lovely. And it's also a great way of keeping the fences actually out from the hedges. It's even easier for maintenance as well when we're doing the hedge cutting, and it's easier for the hedge cutter. He's not ringing up saying that he's after breaking loads of stakes and we have to go back then and fix them. But also we even going through like this also, even the other day, a couple of weeks ago, we were down there and even a hare just flew out in front of us. It's like even just to see even the impact of just having moved out that 3 meters, like realistically, like when people see it, they say, oh my God, this is madness. Like, we shouldn't, but really realistically, a cow is able to eat under it anyway, and as far up, they don't eat that part of the ditch. We have it up high enough the wire that the cows can still eat underneath. So yeah, it's a really nice now park looking at the farm, and even like we graze it with the cows at this time of the year as well. So we have if there's a lame cow or any dry cow that dries off early, we leave them go around, and we have it all set up where they can get access to water and open one side of the wire and leave them go around, which all links up. So yeah, even like going around now, just even seeing that we don't cut the hedges as much now. We just cut them just for maintenance. If we need to cut up, but they more or less maybe some of them every 3 years. We don't cut them just to maintain. And if they're even looking better now on the farm, like it's looking really nice. And if there's even more birds or anything like that around as well, you'd hear it.
Yeah, really good. And tell me what, like, to the average dairy farmer, there's the kind of the concept of the neat farm and I don't know if I'd like my farm to look messy and what would the neighbors think. How would you guys respond to that? How would you respond to that?
I suppose look, it does take getting used to, but I suppose look, there's only like there is like I know but long ago, like even like my father used to feel like that as well. Oh, do you know, if a tidy farm isn't tidy, you're not a good farmer, but like you look like you're a messy farmer. But to be honest, like the farm, like you were still, producing well, and like I still wouldn't think it's a like you wouldn't to me now, like when you look at it, like it's still a real tidy farm. It's just how you go about it. So like even just moving out your fences actually makes it actually the field actually looks way nicer. And we obviously we don't spray underneath the wires. But still like we don't want to leave it go into the middle of the field either. So we do manage that as well as even Shane, like we do want to go in.
And tell me, at the yeah, so Kate, you mentioned there at the beginning, it's a better place to live. You kind of feel that it's like how do you quantify that? Like what does that feel to you, or what does that look? Is it changing all the time? Is it improving? Like you were saying, you saw a hare recently and stuff, but is there anything else that you can kind of say that you're working towards, that it's a better place to work and live? Because I think like mental health and all that is a very important part of farming for nature as well.
Yeah, no, it is. It's like even just going out, even like I do the grass walks. So I measure the grass, and even when I'm out and about, like it's so much more nicer. You hear the birds chirping, you hear all different wildlife. There can be different types of animals or creatures or whatever going around, and just it's more of a vibrant. Like you see all the different kind of these flowers that might have grown there before. Or there's different color around the place. It's just really nice. It's really nice feeling going around. I suppose that's like, look, farming is tough, like it's not easy. This year especially hasn't been easy. But if you manage the farm and just do your simplest, you don't have to go around and do what everyone else is doing. Just do something that's good for your own farm. That look, you might want to put out your hedgerows, like out your wire 3 meters. Look, you might just do 1 meter and 1.5 meters and just see how it goes. Or you might just say, look, I'll stop spraying under this field for just to see what it's going to look like. But it's kind of going whatever you feel for yourself as well. And I suppose you just feel that you're doing that bit for nature, and you do feel good about it as well. Like even we put up owl boxes, and like even the interest of that, like we'd love to have owls on the farm. It'd be lovely, like to see, it's lovely to see nature like that in different types of, like even we have a pond kind of that comes in, and like I was doing the farm walk one day, and sure these 2 wild ducks just flew in. It's like exciting at the same time as well, and I suppose it's the way of life as well. You have to look after, like there's different animals, that need different areas to live too. So you need to look after kind of the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, perfect. So Shane, coming back to you, because you said you kind of started off in the business world and stuff, or an accounts, financials of putting some of your fields, putting out the fence by 3 meters. Has that affected your bottom line, or how do you justify it if it has, or what do you feel about that?
No, like to be honest, Bridget, like if it did, I wouldn't do it, because even though we're larger than average farm, we still can't afford to have land that basically is not paying its way as well. So like as much as it's important to leave it for nature, we still do need to make sure that we're able to make some sort of an income from it as well. So basically, like we are in the acres program now, and we're probably one of a few irrigation farms that are in acres. Like, and it's basically we're maximizing out the payment, so it's over 7,300 a year, for 5 years, which is over 36,500. So even though a lot of our main subsidies are actually going down, just with convergence. So basically, going back towards the average, we would have had higher than average entitlement value. So basically, our subsidies from the EU have been dropping over the last few years. But then getting involved in the environmental scheme, like acres, has actually helped to mitigate a lot of that drop. So those grass margins, for example, they're 3 meters wide, and we actually get paid €1 and 10 cents per meter per year for those. So that's 2,500 meters of field margins. So that's one element of it, and as well as just riparian buffer strips as well. So they're just basically field margins, except for that beside water courses. We don't have any rivers or streams run through the farm, but we do have open drains, and some of those are actually blue lines on the map. So if they're blue lines by regulation, we have to have it moved out 1.5 meters from the top of the drain. So what we did, we moved about 1.5 meters for irrigation and for regulation. We also went out an extra 1.5 meters. Also went up to 3 meters on those as well. So we were moving out the fence 1.5 meters anyway. So we said, why not just move it all at one go and bring it out to the 3 meters? So those margins are actually worth even more than the field margins. They're worth €1 30 cents per meter for the 1.5 meter margin, and they're €1 71 per meter for the 3 meter wide riparian margin. So it's a really good payment, and like Kate mentioned earlier, we still can graze those margins in September and October. So they're actually, all those margins take up 2 acres altogether. So it's only about 1% of the farm, and we're still actually stocked at 2 cows to the acre basically in those, because we put in about 2 or 3 cows into them every year. So we're still actually not abandoned them, not even go wild. And as well as that, then they count towards their eco scheme payment as well. So it's another payment. Basically, there's loads of different ways of getting that payment, and one of the measures is space for nature, and by basically having like the field margins, new hedgerows, and the trees, we can get up to the over 10% space for nature, which meets the criteria for the eco scheme payment. So like there's kind of multiple things there. So like it's not just basically moving your fence out, that's it. We are getting paid for it, we are getting recognized for it. And then, like Kate mentioned, there's loads of good practical benefits too, like for example, for when you actually are hedge cutting the fences or the hedgerows, the fences are out to 3 meters, and there's no fear of any briars or bushes going out over them. And there's better current in the fences as well. We're not putting any fertilizer, slurry, or pesticides anywhere near the hedgerows, which is a big saving for us as well, because God only knows the amount that we would have wasted over the years spreading too close to the hedgerows and into the hedgerows when there was no need to. So there are there's loads of multiple benefits there, and that's important because a lot of people don't realize a lot of these measures. There's actually can be a lot of benefits for the farmer economically and environmentally. Like, it doesn't have to be a case of what, like the first thing people said, like Kate said, is wasted land. And some farmers might come along and say, are these roadways for the cows? Like, they don't actually realize what they're for. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I think it's important just to people can become aware of that. Like, so that's a perfect example of something that can be done on every large dairy farm, is move the fence out. Okay, we have gone above and beyond maybe in some cases, and what you could do is move them out 1.5 meters, which again there's a payment there. It's a little bit less, but it's still a good payment for the field margins for 1.5 meters, and you could do that actually on the larger parts of the farm. So what we decided to do was move them out 3 meters on 20% of the farm where the multi-species is. So the thinking behind that was, we're going to have to move less fences by doing that. So why not move them out 3 meters on 20% of the farm rather than moving them out 1.5 meters on 40% of the farm. So even though the margins are wider, we're actually going to have less work for us. So it actually worked out pretty well. And our other fences, then what we do now is another simple thing. We go around fencing every year. If a stake is broken, we'd actually move that out just 0.5 meter, just so it won't be stuck right on top of the ditch. It just, again, it's from a practical point of view for when we're hedge cutting it, just keeps the fence a little bit away. And if every farmer just done that, it would make a huge difference. And anyone who knows fencing knows that in the space of 10 or 15 years, you'll probably have nearly every stake moved out. So they're all simple measures that can be done that don't cost any money, like, and basically you can actually get paid for doing some of these things 2 acres.
Yeah, interesting. I tell you what, we'll just go to, there's a couple of questions here, and if anyone has any questions for Shane or Kate, please put them in the chat box. Sean Kelly has asked, what do you think about changing the cap to mainly fund environmental policies? Shane?
Well, like, to be honest, I think CAP is gone that way already, and maybe some might argue it's gone too far in that direction. And I don't know. I like, to be honest. I personally, I'm a fan of the likes of acres. I think it works pretty well, and that's coming from the government. It's not coming from the EU, like so. I think acres, when it's done well, and EIPs as well, when it's from the ground up, I think they work very well. Like the Bride project is a good example of that. So I'm probably more in favour of that, and I'd like to see more of the CAP funded for actually the economic viability of farms and things like generation renewal. And I think if that's Sean, I know it's Sean's the chair of the Ag Affairs Committee at Macro, might be different, Sean, but he's obviously passionate about too, improving the sustainability of farms too, and encouraging more young people onto farms. So I think one of the best ways to do that is if farmers have a more viable farms and can see an actual future there. I was lucky enough when I finished college, I could see there was a viable future there. But like back in 2009, like I was saying, even on our farm, which would have been well established, a pretty large dairy farm, at that time, the future was looking kind of bleak because of the milk price and because of the weather conditions at the time. So I think we just need to find as many ways as we can to improve the incomes on farms. And if then young people can see there's actually a really was viable future there, they will go into it, because it can be a great way of life. Like we were saying, like when you can get that balance then with the environment and the social side of things, it can be a really efficient system, as well as being sustainable for the environment. So yeah, that's, so I think there's loads of ways of funding the environment, but I think I do like the EIPs and the likes of acres, but I would like to see more results-based schemes, because I think anyone will tell you that the likes of glass wasn't great for the environment, because people were just doing actions and they wasn't being followed up on. Like, for example, you could plant a new hedgerow, but you could be cutting all your old hedges in the box shape, or you could put up an owl box, but you could take a picture of it and then take it back down again, and you still get paid. So so I'd like to see results-based type schemes, whether that comes from the EU or the government. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. But
Yeah.
I think has to come from the farmer to actually do the actions and put the work in.
Yeah, make it genuine. And tell me, what do you, Sean Kelly has also asked, what do you think you will have to do to be more carbon neutral?
Well, to be honest, I think it's going to be very difficult. Like, especially on a farm like ours. Like, you know, suppose we are I said we are efficient, but we're still a bit away from being carbon neutral. Like, I think planting hedgerows and trees is probably going to be our best way. I think, because like Kate mentioned earlier, we have got lots of open plains on the farm. Like, we're not taking in a huge amount of carbon besides what's in our soils. And our hedgerows over the years would have been cut down fairly low. So it's only been in the last 4 or 5 years that we let hedgerows grow up more. And by planting new hedgerows, they're going to take a long time to be sequestering enough carbon. So I do think by probably maintaining and retaining what we have already on the farm is a huge way, because by any new measures we do are never going to be the same as their existing hedgerows and trees on the farm. So they're going to be the main ways that we can do that, because yeah, like I said, there's not too many dairy farms that are probably going to get to carbon neutral. I think it's a bit of a dream at the moment, but by doing all these kind of small measures over time, like the feed margins, for example, again, those sites should retain more carbon because they're not being intensively grazed. So all those little things will hopefully add up. And we'll have to see then as time goes on whether we can get close to it. But I know some, like the Shinner farm, are trying to get there, and I know their production has been affected. So that's the worry, if we become carbon neutral, that our production will be affected too much. So again, it's a fine balancing act.
Finding that balance. Kate, over to you. Well, David Russell has written here, well done to you. That sounds like a lovely place to be farming. Was it hard to get Shane's father on board with all the changes to improve biodiversity on the farm? This might be a difficult one to answer as a future daughter-in-law, but we'll give it a go.
He's not here, and it's okay.
I know, but it is hard. Like it definitely is. But look, in fairness, he's coming around, I think. But like it's still hard for him, I think, to look. It has been someone so used to always, using sprays and having, and I suppose he came as well then from the mindset of, if the farm wasn't, tidy, if it's not all, neat underneath the hedges, the current mightn't be, like, oh, the fence, the current now upright. And I suppose he still does kind of say that to us. But I suppose, look, in fairness, he is giving us he is leaving us to do what we're doing. And I really do commend him for it, because like, you know, it is hard at that age, like to be able, you know, to be able to leave someone off, and like, because I know it probably is hard for him to look at him. It definitely is when if he's bringing in the cows and he's seeing the you know, the thistles and stuff underneath, and the nettles underneath the wire, like, you know, he is finding it hard to look at. But in fairness, he is leaving us to do it, and I suppose, look, eventually I think it will come around to him, but it is definitely hard for him to come around to it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, Shane, do you want to say something there?
And Kate's point, like, I think it's a really good question, because it's something I've been kind of advocating for a while again on the whole generation renewal piece, because I have seen in my own so it's case of my dad being that he's 70 now, and like he would have had all this I suppose production mindset ingrained in him over 50 years. Like, you know, it's so hard to change that mindset when you're farming a certain way for so long. And like I always say, like, he was given grants to remove all the hedgerows, like, and like they would never get grants to put it back in again. So it's come full cycle. But like, it's very hard for him to change and adapt. So it just shows the importance of getting younger people into the industry, like, you know, have young farmers there who will be quicker to adapt and change. Like as I said earlier, my mindset when I came back from college was the same as my dad, because that's the way I was brought up on the farm. It was, and was just the way policy drove us that way, was to go down the route of production and try and take out every inch of land and put it into grass. And that's what we're getting paid for. So I was lucky enough that I was able to inform and educate myself through different things, been involved in different programs with Chagas, and I've done the UCC course on environmental sustainability as well, and just from talking to people and reading up. So like, I was always a believer in climate change, and even more so now. I think there's not too many people don't believe in it now when they see what's happening around the world. But yeah, so I was able to change my mindset, and I just do. My dad is still, he is on board, but at the same time, I know that if we went away for too long, he'd be out in knapsack and he'd have the whole place sprayed. So, so we still have to watch him. So I can see what the David's a good point. Maybe he has the same situation at home, and I think a lot of young farmers will probably agree that they try to do something for the environment. Their parents are completely against it, and I know people, friends of mine even, who stopped spraying around the hedgerows and under fences, and their dads went back then, like that could be their 80s, and they went back spraying again because they just couldn't look at it anymore. So it's just a complete mindset and attitude change.
Yeah.
I think that's to be driven by younger people. And then when Kate's mentioned the good few times already, when you see positive changes on the farm, a nicer environment to work in with more fully flowering hedgerows, for example, and you see things like hares or ducks on the farm, whatever it is, like, it does kind of, it gets very rewarding, and it is very satisfying to see that you're doing the right thing and you're making a difference. So I think the only way you can do that is by taking small steps. And that's one thing I'd always say to anyone who's thinking about starting the journey. We started from basically doing absolutely nothing to doing as much as we can. So we started from zero. Like, we weren't in the farm that was ever in an environment program before, never in reps, never in glass, or any of those. So we started from zero. So it just shows it can be done by small steps, by little things, moving that fence out at maybe half a meter, by maybe cutting back your fertilizer in certain fields, maybe planting a field of multi-species, just maybe not cutting your hedgerows for 1 year, not spraying under a fence for a year and see how it goes. All those little things, and eventually has a snowball effect. And before you know it, you could be planting a new hedgerow and you could be digging a pond. So you have to start somewhere.
It's addictive. Just telling you, it is addictive. Farming nature.
Yeah, you get hooked.
Yeah, just really quickly there, Shane, just because you kind of mentioned your journey. Was there one pivot moment or one moment that you changed the way you kind of thought about farming, or is it just been gradual and just going on different courses and meeting different people?
Yeah, no, like I was saying, it's definitely a gradual thing. Like I can't even pinpoint one light bulb moment or one moment where I said, look, I'm going to do loads for the environment. There was never one certain moment. I don't even know where it even started exactly, to be honest. But I suppose, yeah, it's just, again, just those little things, and like, you don't even realize it. And it's not then until I kind of look through, like, say, don't we have groups come to the farm, and we might have a leaflet on biodiversity on the farm, and you see the list of things we've done, and I find it hard to believe myself sometimes, and I think back to where we were, like. So hopefully there could be people here on the call that could be in similar situations for years, where they've done little small simple things, low cost things over the years, and they've all added up, and they've eventually become a big thing. And so something I always say too is that we could do 100 things on the farm, but it's not going to make a huge difference, like, you know. But if we can get every farmer to do something, one or two small things, like, that could have a big impact. And then I suppose a lot of people would say to us, like, okay, we're only a small fish in the ocean, like, we're Ireland, like, what difference are we going to make when China, India, America, South America are are polluting the world, and you have the whole carbon leaching argument, complete leakage argument, which I completely agree with as well. But at the same time, my mindset is fully that we still have to do the right thing. Like, it's all about having a nice environment on our own doorstep. Like who doesn't want to have good water quality around us? Who doesn't want to leave a better legacy for the next generation? Like every farmer wants it. Every person living in the community wants to do that. So why would you blame someone else and just do nothing here? To me, it doesn't make sense. So I think we all have an obligation, whether you're farming or not, to do something small, like, and it could be something as simple as even just doing lots of recycling. Or, for example, when I done the course in the UCC, I learned about the circular economy and like reusing things. Like, so for example, I'm not changing my phone every year and keep my phone for longer and trying to use old phones. It's something simple like that, and I'd be very conscious about recycling and putting on the dishwasher in night mode. Like, these kind of little things, and they can actually save you money as well. So like everyone can do that in their day-to-day lives. You don't need to be a farmer, and like maybe cutting your lawn a little bit less. Someone could dig a small pond in their garden. Someone could plant a hedge in their garden. Like, you don't have to have loads of land to make a difference either. So they're kind of messages I'm always trying to get across to people as well.
So because we're talking about financials, and I know we've kind of spoken about the advantages of being part of agri-environment schemes and stuff, but in general, you've cut back your inputs. You've started kind of building up your nitrogen and your clover replacements and stuff. Like, how's the financials sit with your farm these days? Like, do you feel a bit more secure with it, or you were saying also before that you're trying to bring it more in-house, like grow your own feed and stuff like that. Where do you feel that you don't have to mention your actual financials, obviously, but just where do you feel that you sit at the moment? Do you feel kind of comfortable where you are in terms of what you're putting into your land and what you're getting out of your land? Or would you like to move a bit more in any direction?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I definitely think I feel like we're building a more robust and resilient system. Like for the last 2 years, have really proven that the importance of becoming more adapted to climate change, because like everyone was farming the last 18 months or so have been so difficult on farms. Just with the wet weather, it made it very difficult, I suppose, just to get through day-to-day work, or basically trying to keep our head above water. So I think if we're going to get those more extreme weather patterns, which we are, it just goes to show how necessary it is to be ahead of the curve and to try and improve our soil health and cut back on our reliance on chemical fertilizers and leave more room for nature, all that kind of stuff. So, like, I'll be honest, I think there's everyone on this call as farming here would say the same thing, that our profitability hasn't been as good as it has been compared to 21 and 22, and that's down to the weather conditions. Like, we just weren't able to get the cows out to grass as much as we usually would. And like I said, 23, for example, we were feeding poor quality silage than we should have been. So profitability has declined on dairy farms over the last couple of years. The milk prices come back up again now, which is obviously helpful, and we have had a good back end of the year. So this year mightn't turn out to be too bad overall. So, but just got to show, like, if we don't do any adapt to climate change, we're going to suffer a lot from a profitability point of view as well. Like, we'll hit our performance, our production with the cows, and like, we don't want to end up in a system where our cows are being housed for 6 months a year. Like, so that's not the type of system anyone really wants in Ireland, because obviously grass is our natural competitive advantage as well. So we want to try and keep cows out of grass as much as possible. And if we can do that with a lower input system and healthier soils, that's the dream, I suppose. That's where we want to be, like, because we just can't, as simple as this, we can't keep going with a monoculture system of just pretty ryegrasses and spread over 200 kilos of nitrogen per hectare every year. It's not going to be allowed by regulations, or it's just not going to be sustainable. So we have to find ways around that and try to maintain our profitability. It's going to be difficult probably to improve our profitability, because we're being asked to cut back numbers and reduce. It's all reductions and reducing numbers at the moment. So there's no question it's going to be hard to increase our profitability. But if we can maintain our production and profitability, as well as improving our sustainability environmentally, I think we'll be in a pretty good place.
Yeah. And if you say you were standing in front of like a group of young Green Start students now, and they asked you to give your 5 top tips on how you would start adapting your farm for the future, which is, say, climate change. So what would your kind of top tips, where would you start?
Well,
on a dairy
the first
farm?
thing I would say is start small. Like, that's one thing, because I've been to farms and I've seen great work done for the environment, but I found it's gone too extreme, and I can kind of put people off. Like, so I think especially if you're a pretty productive, progressive farm, I think you have to kind of take baby steps, because otherwise you're just going to get frightened away. Like, you know, if you go from, say, cutting your hedgerows every year to stopping completely cutting them, like, that's going to be just too much. Like, it's your parents are definitely going to run away, and I'm not going to agree with that. So yeah, it's just starting small. And I'd say another thing is low cost as well. Try and keep things low cost, because if you spend too much money and it's end up costing a lot of money, you're not going to do it either. So simple and low cost are the best ways. Again, the other thing is talk to your advisor. Try and get involved in schemes as well. Like, you know, for example, the horses mouth is a great scheme through Farm for Nature, whereas Road Mark and down to the farm, he walked around with me and he could see opportunities where I could improve nature on the farm, or improve habitats on the farm, or create new habitats. And that's where we decided to build the pond at the Hare's Corner. And we got a grant as well from Farm for Nature to build the pond. So that all kind of stemmed again from getting involved in that initiative and getting good advice. So I wasn't obviously an expert in any of this, because my mindset was completely opposite when I came back. So I'm not an ecologist or not an environmentalist by any stretch of the imagination. So I needed to rely on people who have expertise. So I'd say that's very important too, is to talk to people who have expertise in the area, whether it might not have to be an ecologist, but someone who has some bit of knowledge on biodiversity, or for example, digging a pond, and I think it was Phelim Harty, I talked that time through the Farm for Nature program before we got the grant. It was actually mandatory to talk to him, which is very good, because I could have dug a pond completely in the wrong place and not done it right. So that is important, because another thing is important as well when you're doing anything for the environment, is to make sure you do the right thing in the right place. So everyone might think it's a great idea to dig a pond, but you could actually dig a pond somewhere where it's actually destroying another habitat, which is obviously defeats the purpose. Another thing is, for example, you could plant a tree, but you could plant it in the middle of a field, and it wouldn't really have much of a purpose. Okay, it would take in carbon, but what you could actually do is instead plant that beside a water course. So it has multiple benefits. So it is taking in the carbon, could be a shelter belt for the cows, and it could also be stopping basically the barrier for any fertilizers getting into the water course. So there's loads of multiple benefits from one action. So by getting proper expertise and advice on that, you can actually get more bang for your buck, I suppose, if you know what I mean. And the same for the owl box, another good example, because I think that's a really important point, is to, when you're doing something, try and do it right. Like, when we put up the owl box, we could put it anywhere, and it mightn't have we might get the best results. So by basically talking to someone, we get good advice on where to position it. So we positioned it sheltered from the prevailing wind. It was at a good height that the owls would fly into it, and it was pointing towards an open area. As well as that, by having the field margins there, that gives, I suppose, a habitat for their prey. So you have the field mice and the shrews and the voles living in that, which the owls can actually eat, and once they arrive in the owl boxes, hopefully. And as well as that, then we stopped using rodenticide. So hopefully, if the owls do come, they catch a rat or a shrew, they won't get secondary poison. So there's a lot more thinking behind it than people might realize as well. So even though you're trying to keep things simple and low cost, you still have to really think about your actions as well, and try and make sure, are these really good for nature, and how can you get the best benefit for nature as well. Like, so I would advise really talk to people who are in the expertise. So I'm not sure how many that is, but I think keeping it simple is one, and low cost is another, and talking to someone with expertise is another. And then the other thing that I suppose is to say is it's just kind of take in everything you've done, like when you're walking around the farm, and start noticing more what's going on around you, and appreciating nature, and that's how it becomes rewarding, and that's why you start doing more then, because as you said, Bridget, it becomes infectious after a while, and it becomes addictive. So when you do actually, hopefully, like, we haven't got barn owls yet because they're only up in a year, but if we do happen to get barn owls on the farm, for us, that'd be one of the proudest moments that we've had in farming, that, because we've never seen owls on the farm. So I think that would be amazing for us to get owls, and it would give us even more motivation to do more and more things like so. So yeah, I think they're kind of the best tips, I suppose. Do you have any other things, Kate, or do you?
Well, I suppose as well, like, a lot of farmers don't really realize that, like, they don't have to put anything. It's just maintaining what they have, or stuff. Like, farmers could have most, like, lovely hedges, but they're just cutting them back too much, and they're going too low. Just leave them up, and as Shane said, you don't have to leave them go up and grow wild. Just don't cut them every year. Maybe cut them every 3 years, or maybe do one section of the farm for 2 years, and maybe, what, actually that hedge actually is not really, it doesn't need to be cut back, so you don't need to do that side. There could be different you don't have to do the whole farm, like you're just doing sections of the farm and keep them maintained. And so like there's like you don't have to, it costs you money to do what to put everything in. Like it doesn't have to, just maintain what you have and enhance it. And
These actually save money. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
most contractors
yeah.
and reducing their sprays. Like,
So you don't, and like even just if you do have an area where, so there could be like an old building on the farm or something like that. So it might be actually an area where maybe to put up an owl box or a bat box or something. You know, there like something like that simple, like that could actually really, enhance the biodiversity or anything on your farm as well. So or even the nature. Like doesn't have to be even, there could be an area where it's always really wet, and it could actually be maybe the ideal spot then to have a pond or so that so it doesn't have to be like, oh God, I'm going to go into this good paddock now and I'm going to actually build a pond there. Like there could be a wet area in your farm that's really wet and it's not really productive. So maybe, it might actually be better as a pond or something for nature. So it's just, yeah.
if you want to take an answer, I saw Sean ask a question on agroforestry.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
So you could answer that if you want, Shane. There, Sean Kelly's asked, "What do you think of agroforestry?"
Yeah, so to be honest, like I said, we're still early enough on the journey, even though we've done that so far. It's still not gone to that level yet. At the moment, like the mindset is that we're leaving nature all around the boundary. So if you visit a farm now, you still see all our fields are weed free in the middle of them, basically. So we have our grass, our clover, our multi-species in the middle of the fields, and around the boundaries. Then we're not using our pesticides or cutting as much. So that's where all our biodiversity is. It's around the margins, the hedgerows, and a few areas that are, I suppose, like Kate mentioned, the wetter part of the farm that we graze extensively, in acres again, and we have the things like the hedgerows, which are basically just dividing up blocks. But I suppose at the moment it's probably a step too far for us. But I think it is something down the line that we will consider to say, like, it's not something we'd rule out, but just at the moment we're kind of, again, it's all about taking baby steps. I suppose if we went from doing what we're doing to go to agroforestry, it was just too much, and it's not something we necessarily, I think, need on our farm. It can be suited maybe some certain types of farms, and that maybe are more, I suppose the topography could be different, more slope and land. Maybe it could be good for catching again any kind of runoff on land, and it could be good for shelter for cows as well and things like that, or animals. But for us, it's not really something that's on the radar at the moment. We'd be more interested in something like the native woodland scheme, where we could plant maybe in a section of farm near the pond where it was kind of just a waste area. Like it wasn't used for grazing. It was just like an old yard previously, and was used for, we dug it up for roadways and things like that. So it's an area that trees could be planted there, and we could use a scheme like that. But like, we still don't have any intention of planting loads of trees on a really good land, because we are in a productive type of a fertile soil. Like, so for us it doesn't really make sense to go covered in trees at the moment. So I do think there is room for it, but it is a good question. I think it could be something that we'll see more of in the future, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the Irish Agroforestry Forum for those of you who are interested. It's just that Shane mentioned it earlier. We have something called the Horse's Mouth Mentorship Program. For those of you who don't know, it's a peer-to-peer mentorship where we have 100 ambassadors, Farming for Nature ambassadors like Shane, but you would put in an application and then we match you up with a mentor, another farmer who comes out onto your land and walks the land with you. And it's not a judgment thing, it's more of just giving recommendations of what they would do on their land. So it might suit some of you to look that up. It's called the Horse's Mouth Mentorship Program, and it's on farmingfornature.ie. Shane and Kate, thank you so much. That's been a whistle-stop tour of your farm. It's really inspiring to hear that you're on this journey, and I feel very much, you're kind of very different to maybe a lot of our other ambassadors, that you are starting, you're finding your feet, you're looking at the economics of it, but also you're trying to make as many improvements as you can. So thank you for sharing that with us, and hopefully it will inspire others as well to join up. If anyone hasn't seen Shane and Kate's video, it's now up on our YouTube channel, and this recording of
Yeah,
this
we could
will
be
also...
losing there, Bridget. I'm not sure it's just us, but I think you're after someone.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, I think I might be gone, so I might just say goodbye to everyone, and thanks very much.
For a second, Bridget, I think.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bye.
Yeah.